We need to be careful, in my opinion, about the arguments that we make or the arguments that we allow ourselves to be drawn into. I posted a video earlier today in which I talked about what Donald Trump is apparently planning to do in Chicago, sending the military into that city. It is a flagrant violation of the law. It is a flagrant violation of the Constitution. He has no authority to do it. And to that end, as we fight this battle, which, in my opinion, is the battle that must be fought, this is the red line. This is the battle we need to fight, and this is where we need to stop Donald Trump. Because if we allow him to use the military in Chicago, then he will move on to other states and other cities, and there will be nothing to stop him. The precedent will have been set if we allow him to get away with it in Chicago. And the point I want to make here about arguments is Donald Trump is using the argument that crime is out of control in the city of Chicago as the basis for sending the military in. It's the argument he made in Washington, D.C. But Washington, D.C. is a fundamentally different situation. That is not a state. And it is completely different from a legal and constitutional point of view for Donald Trump to federalize the state police or the metropolitan police there in Washington, D.C., and to send the National Guard into Washington, D.C. That is a much different legal and constitutional situation than doing so in a state without the governor or the legislature's permission. He used the crime argument in Washington, and he's using the crime argument to lay the foundation for sending the military in Chicago. And I see many Democrats refuting his argument by saying that crime is not as bad in Chicago as he says. And they cite statistics and all of this. I think that's a mistake, because you are accepting his argument that crime prevention is a sufficient legal basis for him to use the military in Chicago. And it's just a question of, well, crime isn't as bad as he says, so therefore he doesn't need to do this. No, that is accepting his argument. And we should not do that. It doesn't matter how bad crime is in Chicago. He still would not have the legal or constitutional authority to send the military there. And if we engage in his argument, then we're accepting it. And then it's just a matter of, well, who's right, who's wrong? Oh, it's just a disagreement over how bad crime is. And, you know, I guess Trump, if he sees it differently, he can send the military in. No. The truth of the matter is, the state of Illinois could get rid of all their criminal laws if they wanted to. They could just decide to let all criminals commit whatever crimes they want, and that they would not arrest or prosecute anyone under state law. They could do that if they want to. Of course, that's not the situation, but they could do that. And that still would not be a legal or constitutional basis for Trump to use the military. Trump has no authority to enforce state law. Now, if there's federal laws being violated, sure, he can use federal law enforcement to enforce state law. But under no circumstances can he use the military to go in there and enforce state law, or to, make up law? Because if Illinois, under my hypothetical, got rid of all their criminal laws, there wouldn't even be any state laws to enforce. The point is, I'm taking this to an extreme, an extreme logical conclusion here. But the point is, in our federal system, the states get to decide what their criminal laws are. And they are solely responsible for the enforcement of their criminal laws. And it doesn't matter what laws there are, if there aren't laws, if the laws aren't being enforced, if crime's out of control. It doesn't matter. None of that gives him the legal or constitutional authority to send the military into Chicago or any other city in this country, except Washington, D.C., because that's completely different. Now, there are other circumstances under the Insurrection Act that aren't applicable here, these circumstances don't exist here, and Trump's not even making the argument that they do. There are certain circumstances under the Insurrection Act where the president could deploy the military to states without the consent of the governor or the legislature. But Trump is not even alleging those circumstances here. He is solely citing the out-of-control crime in Chicago. And under no circumstances is that alone legal justification, constitutional justification for him to use the military. And we shouldn't engage in that argument. We shouldn't just get into an argument about whether Trump is accurate in how he describes the crime situation in Chicago. Because even if he were right, it still doesn't give him the legal authority to do what he's planning to do. And so you should not engage in that argument. The argument is, this is dictatorship. This is a violation of federalism. It is a violation of state sovereignty, and it is illegal and unconstitutional. And he should be impeached and removed from office if he tries this. That is what we should be talking about. And yes, this Congress right now is not going to impeach and remove him from office, but it should be talked about in those terms. The American people need to understand this is not legal. And this is an impeachable offense if he tries this. Do not accept his argument that if crime is bad enough, he would be justified in doing it. He's not, under any circumstances. It's important, the arguments that you make and the arguments that you accept. Do not be drawn in. And I'm seeing elected Democrats do this. Do not allow him to draw you into his argument. Reject it out of hand. Reject it and focus to what the real issue is. This man is an out-of-control, dictatorial authoritarian, and he must be stopped. He cannot be allowed to get away with this violation of the law and the Constitution. Do not accept his arguments. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching. Talk to you again soon.